This is Dave.
This is Reese.
And this is Manic Joy, a podcast about
life,
love,
and uncertainty.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 6. We're more than halfway through season 1 of Manic Joy. Wow.
Wow.
How exciting. I hope you're excited. We're excited. What crazy times we live in here today at this given moment.
Yep. We might have some extra time to make some more podcasts because we'll have some time. Would you like to explain why we have all the time?
Well, we are now in the throes of coronavirus sweeping the globe.
COVID-19.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we hope you're out there being smart, being safe, and just taking care of each other, taking care of your family, looking out for one another, that whole thing. Reese is rubbing her temples already. How are you doing? Because I know, for those of you who don't know, Reese is the one with more anxiety of the two of us. I was lovingly calling her CDC Reese this afternoon as we were doing some things. So Reese, how are you?
Hanging in there. This is quite an anxiety fest for me. I don't do well with apocalyptic, scenarios, although it's funny because I love zombie movies and scary movies, but I always close my eyes when it's those opening, apocalyptic moments, and because I get extreme fear about it. But for the most part, I think I'm doing better than I normally would be doing in these times.
So just to give you a little bit of a sense of what we're dealing with here, as Reese was just explaining that to you, I looked out the window and someone was walking by wearing vinyl gloves.
I didn't do that today.
No,
I didn't do that.
The times in which we live. So hopefully we're not in a scenario where we're...
But you should
let's act as if... I thought you actually shared a very interesting thing on Facebook today that is...
Is it my 18-second clip?
Maybe that we should all act as if we have the virus and we don't want to spread it to anyone.
Exactly.
Versus acting like we don't want to get the virus. I think that actually is a really interesting distinction to think about.
Yep.
It changes your behavior a little bit. And I think that's ultimately what... I think at this period of time, until we get a handle on everything, is where people should be resuming.
Exactly.
Today's episode is about career. And many of us, the girls, are home for 2 weeks, at least at the moment. I have started work from home. Reese, I believe, where are you at this point?
I'm supposed to be on spring break next week, but I think we also have an extra week after that. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go from there, depending on what happens within the next 2 weeks.
But I know you've been receiving many notices to prepare to teach your classes online.
Right. So I'm about to go into the unknown for myself, as far as...
Into the unknown!
Yep. You retreated to my delightful voice. Good for you. I am going to be trying to figure out how to maneuver a public speaking course via the interwebs. So it's going to be interesting to do an online course where you're supposed to be in public speaking. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that because I'm not a big fan. I think that online courses are essential and are very useful to those who can't really, because of work or family, can't attend college. But for me, I'm an advocate for you should be in class when you're doing any type of public speaking to get the essence of it. And the same thing goes with theater as well. There's a magic to being in front of a live audience.
In the room.
The room with you.
There's something about being in the room.
So I have to I'm going to have to reorganize how I see this. So this is something I'm trying to figure out in the coming days.
Well, I think, some of the discussion we'll have a little later on when we're talking about our careers or where we've gotten to the points that we are. we're all in this situation where, I work from home. And I think work from home is a nice situation when you need it. Not the situation or scenario that I thrive in necessarily, because I too am one of those people, as we've mentioned in previous episodes. I am a person who thrives off the energy of other people, and being in the room and reading people and all of that is one of the essential elements of how I thrive. And so it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully this is not for a prolonged area of time. So we won't belabor the point any longer, but
yes,
we hope everyone is smart and safe. Yeah, hopefully you find yourself with some time to look for a distraction, and hopefully we can be that for you. As I mentioned, we're discussing our careers today and kind of the paths that got us there. And lightly, I think we touched on before, or at least I had mentioned, the difference between a job versus a career. And I think ultimately there are things that you do that you need to do to make money at a given point in time during your path through life.
Right.
But ultimately, hopefully you get to a point where you find something that you believe is your career and something that you put energy into. I mean, I know the type of person I am. I'm not necessarily working all the time, but I'm thinking about what I do all the time and looking for ways to improve, and how do I do something, more efficiently, or how do I get a better result? And so like that to me is a thing that's a career, because it's something that you don't mind thinking about all the time. Whereas a job is, and we've had these situations, and we can talk about this when we get to it, but also that idea of, when we were working together, that was a job. And we were. I
forgot.
I know. I put it down, but I didn't put that we were connected together on that. So we'll have to talk about that. But we very much were of the ilk of like, okay, on the train ride home, this is when we were living in New York, we can discuss work and get all of that out. But once we leave, I ain't thinking about that job, and I ain't talking about it, right? Right? And so, but again, a job versus a career, I think completely different things. So, Reese, why don't you start us off by telling us a bit about maybe what was your job journey? Like, what were the jobs that you kind of had growing up? And let's start there, and we'll build to career.
So it's so funny because as an only child, sufficiently spoiled, I didn't really need money, but I was dependent on my parents, and I had been begging them forever, let me have a job. And they were like, no, just no. And I don't really know the rationale behind that, but whatever. At 17, a group of my friends, my friend Laura DiPiazza, hopefully she's listening, she got me this job at a local video store when video stores were the thing. And it was one of the knockoff Blockbusters on Sheepshead Bay, and my buddy Andrew worked there as well. So I went in there knowing people. It was called Medejo's Video. Medejo's. I think it was like a combination of the owner's kids' names.
Okay.
So they were wild. They were crazy. That was quite the job. So I got the job. I didn't tell my parents right away. And then eventually I told them, and they weren't happy, but they were happy when I got my first paycheck and I didn't ask them for money. So it was kind of good there for a while. And Medejo's was the type of place that had a lower level, which had a private room for 18 and over. Yeah. We also had some.
Remember the little sections of those video stores with like the curtain?
They had the black. They had a black curtain.
Yep.
And then upstairs they did sell some adult toys.
Okay.
So the fun part for other people at that job, not for me, was sending me downstairs to sweep that room. And I hated it, and I didn't want to do it. And there was TV cameras, and they would watch me trying to sweep with my eyes closed. And I didn't know that for the longest time. And then every once in a while, they would make me sell things like edible underwear and stuff like that to customers. And I would be a mess. I would be like, through the whole thing. And then one night there was no one in there, and we were bored, and we opened up one of the packages of edible underwear to see what it was. And it was like a fruit roll up, and we all ate it. It was interesting.
Was it good?
It was a little hard
That's
what she said. A-O. And then, and so I had that job for a while. And then one night, my dad, I think I was there for almost like a year or two. I don't really remember. And then my dad came to pick me up one night, and there was a random hobo outside. And then my dad made me quit. There's homeless people. There was like one random hobo, and that was it. So I had to quit that job. But okay, so that was Medeja, was my first job. Then there was All for $1 on Avenue U, which my mother made me get that job because she lived in there and knew the owner by name, and she wanted discounts. Right. And don't think for a second that the biggest question there was, how much is this? Mm-hmm. I really can't. Then there was Pizzerini, which was also in Sheepshead Bay, and it was like a little restaurant.
But it wasn't Pizza Reese.
You're a Pizza Reese.
Hey.
I hated that job. I decided at
what
that
did you do
point
there?
I was a waitress, and I hated it. And people were terrible, awful. And I decided that would be something I would never ever do again. Some people are really good at waitressing. I was not good at it, and I didn't like it. Then I went away to school, and I worked at the mailroom at University at Buffalo, and I would forget to put people's mail in their mailboxes and do it at like 12 o'clock at night, so I would get like very nasty letters in the mailboxes, so that was fun. And then I graduated there, and then I had the Disney store on Fifth Avenue, and that got me the job at the Lion King at the New Amsterdam when that opened. Loved that job because I got to see Lion King.
Were you an usher there?
I was an usher.
Okay.
I was terrible at my job. And then at one point they removed me because I was seating people in the wrong places. And because I didn't know East and West and how to... they put me on elevator duty. So basically, another thing that I do not like doing is riding in elevators. And they're like, your personality is so great. We're going to give you something where you get to talk to people. It's going to be so much fun. Because you have to learn the history of the theater, which was great. So I learned the whole history of the New Amsterdam. So they put me in the GD elevator, and I had to ride up and down with people and tell them the history of the theater. That was just... God, that was the worst. Then I started directing, which was kind of like my first big career move.
I remember that.
Yeah, in Oceanside, school number 3.
Yep.
I used to do these kids shows there, and I was hired because of my degree. Mm-hmm. I directed Alice in Wonderland and Stuart Little. I did all these little fun plays, and that was kind of cool. And then because I made connections when I was getting my master's degree at CW Post. I made friends with one of my colleagues, and him and his wife owned a bed and breakfast called Swanview Manor, and I worked at Swanview for the longest time. It was this adorable little bed and breakfast, and God rest her soul, Michelle, she passed away like a few years ago, my boss. She ran it and decorated and took care of this place like it was her baby, and I loved working for her. She was actually pretty great. They gave me a lot of responsibility there, and she used to go away and let me run the whole place by myself. I couldn't imagine anybody.
I forgot about that place.
Swanview Manor. It was great in Oceanside and Long Island. It was just, I loved that job. My parents would come and spend a weekend there. It was fun. It was a good job. Then when I met you, I was working at Kingsborough. I started my job at Kingsborough teaching. That was huge. Actually, my first day of teaching was supposed to be on 9/11. And I obviously didn't start till like a week later. Then I met you, and we had our job together at USATC, and I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Sure.
And then I was at Kingsborough forever. And then through Kingsborough, I had side little jobs because they had a middle school and a high school on the campus. So I also did work there doing some theater stuff with my doppelganger, Lindsay. We did a lot of middle school theater stuff together, which was so much fun. Then we moved here.
No, you didn't. What about the doctor's office with the Frankels, right?
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, my God. Right. At the podiatrist, which I don't like feet, but I loved Reg and her husband so much, and they gave me a great opportunity, actually. Yeah. Working there, and a couple of times like the other doctor that worked there was like, can you come in and help me like attend while she's doing stuff, and I would want to barf the whole entire time with the person's looking at the person's foot. When I think about it, I'm like, but I was front desk there, and that was also she treated us great there. That was also really good. Totally forgot about that too. I've had 1,000,000 jobs.
This was difficult because I was like thinking back, and I think I got everything, but I'm sure there's
I
probably
feel like I'm
some
still
things.
missing things.
I'm sure there's some things I was missing or I'm missing.
Like little side things, and those were like usually like stage manager things. I got a couple of those side jobs. I got a couple of other. What else? I don't know, like other little theater things I got here or there, which was great too. And then we moved here. And I didn't get into Northern Essex right away, but I did get a job at a doctor's office in Haverhill where I met some awesome people. I stayed at that job for way too long because I loved the people that I worked with.
Right, yeah.
And so there was that. Then there was the dance school for a time.
Yeah.
Then there was acting out, where I still do stuff, teaching and directing, and then YDO in Lawrence. I worked with them as well. Yeah. And then I got my Northern Essex job, and then from that, I get to work with the early college kids, and I'm supposed to be starting this 21st century program at Methuen High School, but I don't know what's going to happen. And then my dream was to also work at 2 different colleges. That was like kind of like part 1 of my career dream, and I got this great opportunity thanks to my genie at Endicott College, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to still do that at the beginning of May. We'll see. But it's also an online course, so this is kind of throwing me into the trenches a little bit sooner. So I have to really get my online game going, and hopefully the Endicott College thing is going to happen. And then so that's where I am now. I'm at Northern Essex, and that's my career. I'm like you, where I think about ways of making my classes more efficient for everybody, because I have such an eclectic group of students that come in. So I have to make it functional for my high school students, and then my adults, and my working adults, and my young adults. Like, it's just, and I'm always thinking about how to make it fun and exciting, because public speaking is difficult. You know, when I get an opportunity to teach theater, I love it, but there's a lot of theater in my public speaking courses, so I just love that, and the students seem to connect with that. Not all of them, but some of them. So I'm always thinking like you are, you know, in that way, and that's why I feel like my teaching is something I always wanted to do, and that's my career. So that's kind of my journey right now.
Cool.
What about you?
Whoa, okay. So jobs, so I feel like I don't know the exact order of many of these. Obviously, the closer to this time frame, it starts to make a more sequential sense. But I was trying to think, like, what was my first job? I'm not really sure, but I knew I had a job I worked at a cafeteria. Like, Stan was a cook at one of these, and so it was for Gillette. Actually, he was in the cafeteria at Gillette, so I worked there for a bit.
At Gillette Stadium?
No, Gillette. I'm sorry, Gillette, the razor company.
Oh, the actual razor company.
Yeah, they had a factory out here.
That's cool.
Actually, over near Corbani's Bakery. You know where that is, right?
Yep.
So in the back over there, in that little road that's on the side, there used to be a diner there, and I used to wash dishes at that diner. So I was a dishwasher for a while. I worked at Blue Seal Feeds, which is down there where my grandparents used to live on West Street in Lawrence. That was down the other end of that road.
What is that? What's a feed?
So that was as like food for animals, grains, all that type of stuff. And so I worked at that shop. So I would go, get people, had like a little hand pallet, and would load up people's stuff and put it in their cars. I was a janitor for a church at one point. It was like an Armenian church. I forget how I got that job. I think I may have helped somebody who had that job, and then they moved on, and then I took that over. I think that's what it was, actually. And so, like, I worked at a church for a while where I would just go there, like, after hours and go clean the place and take care of all that stuff. We talked about UPS, where I was a package handler and a trainer. At one point, I worked for the I don't even know what it's called, but the Shaw's, not the factory, but like the distribution center for like Shaw's supermarkets. They have one out here. You
had a lot of hands-on.
Oh yeah, like everything that was like physical and things like that. And it was and it was I was a pallet packer basically. Like stores would
pallet
That's
packer.
Right. Stores would order what they have, so you have this list of labels, and you'd build the pallet with the things. Then you'd put the labels on the thing to say like, all right, this is all the stuff that the store wanted and then you'd load those into trucks. That was interesting. I also used to wash golf carts for a while at one of the local golf carts over here. Like, yeah, there were lots of things. I was a security guard for a little bit, not a lot of it, just a little bit. I had a telemarketing job. We'll talk about that more.
Okay, I had one of those for 2 seconds.
Those were...
I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
And then there was a point George Nicolaitis also was trying to get me that job, but he would just call me every day. So I was like, this might not be for me.
He did not sell anything.
No.
And then I worked actually with the Diodatis for a while because they had a construction company, so I did a lot of that work. And I remember actually one of those things. So one of the cars that I bought from a friend of mine was... I forget what year, I want to say 80-something Oldsmobile Brom was the name of the car. Eesh. And it was one of those big, like, boat-type cars. Mm-hmm. And it was a hunk of crap. I bought it for $1 from my buddy Chris Rosato. Yeah, thank you, Chris. And it had a leak. Like, one of the gaskets was leaking, and so every time I would stop the car, smoke would bellow from the hood. Nice. It was pretty ridiculous. And so the joke was every time because we'd have to go early to these construction jobs so we could get started, and typically, like, I would be there first before Mr. D would show up, and it was always like, I can tell how long you've been here by how much smoke is still coming out of your car. So that was kind of the joke. So I did that for a while. Then when I went away... when I was at UMass, I was like at the front desk at the college there, and I did like the mail room, similar to what you were talking about. Well, in New York, I was an RA, of course. I was recruiting for the theater department. Then I got that job we could maybe spend a little bit of time talking about USATC, which was U.S. Athletic Training Center. Yep. I was started at the front desk there while I was going to school. That was a fun job. There was a lot of good people there, and it was some iffy moments. Which I'll talk about that when we get to where we ended up kind of moving to a real career. But that was a fun job. But I started at the front desk, and then I moved up to eventually doing insurance billing, and then I was the practice manager for that whole thing for a while there. And I think one of the things with me is you'll find too that I am, many of these were just little jobs and whatever. But, because it was ingrained in me to always do the best you can do at whatever job that you have, because that will translate to when you find something that you really care about, that you'll do that even better. I was always, trying to be good at what I did and put a lot of effort in. And then many of these jobs, USATC, even today where I'm at Constant Contact, like I am a hunkered down and long-term type of person. Like I'm very loyal and that type of thing. Like I enjoy those places where you have the opportunity to kind of sit in it and grow with it and really live into it and actually really do some things that you wouldn't necessarily do if you were just, in and out kind of. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, so those were kind of many of the jobs that at least I can remember. I don't think I'm missing anything. I think those are most of them. But yeah, those were some of the jobs that I had throughout the years to just, make some money.
And I worked at a lot of camps. Did you ever do camp work?
I never did any camp work.
A lot of camp stuff.
And the other thing that I never did was like a food service, or I should say not food service, but like a waiter. I was never a waiter or anything like that, which is...
Like you would think that would be a job. Both of us would be good because we're kind of personable, but...
So yeah, it's... One of my things with that though is that I'm not good at... How do I explain this? I'm not good at being treated like a servant. Yes. But I am good at entertaining and hosting people. Right. For sure. But I don't like when people go the other way with that. And not that everybody is like that, obviously. But there are people that are like that. And I'm not good with people treating me a certain way that I don't think it would have been good for me.
The great thing about that, though, is the money that you can make. One night, one of the girls that I worked with did not show up, so I had all the tables. Yeah. I made a buttload of money. I didn't have to share my tips. Mm-hmm. That was a great night. But the downside of that, and it happened more times than not, is the way that, one, people talk to you. Yeah. Two, one of the things that made me quit that job was that some guy grabbed my butt.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
And I don't like that, and I probably could have gotten fired, but the reason why I got that job is the owners were Lebanese. Mm-hmm. We were in there all the time. My grandmother was always talking to him, and she made him give me the job. Yeah. And so, he was somewhat protective of me as well, because I think he was afraid of my grandmother and my mother, which obviously makes sense. And I told him, and what was great is that he stood up for me with that, so that wasn't allowed, but I didn't like that was something that could happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What had happened was
What had happened
was I accidentally dropped his pita bread on the floor and picked it up I may have cleaned the floor a little bit with it when I put it back in the basket and gave it back to him. And I do not, in these times especially, do not think that engaging in that type of behavior is good, because that's karma. Who knows what I got in return. But I just know that it made me also be very kind to those in that industry.
Yeah.
Like, you always tip well.
For sure.
Always be respectful. Blah, blah, blah.
So what was, out of that whole mishmash of jobs that you had, what was the worst job, you would say?
Oh, by far Disney.
Really?
Disney Store on Fifth Avenue.
So explain that a little bit. Why was that the worst?
Because they ran it like the military. It was very restrictive. So when you went in there, when they say that they train you, they were training you.
Yeah.
We had a booklet of all the things, of the do's and the don'ts, like no perfume, no nail polish, no dangling earrings, the makeup had to be like where you barely saw it. You had to, there were cameras everywhere. So you would walk in, they had to look through your bag, you had to check in. On the way out, same thing. They look through your bag, they check in, and then you couldn't call what you were wearing a uniform. It was a costume. You had to go backstage when you were on your break. They were very on top of you for everything. I got written up for so many things, and then it was just you would go backstage, and it was the flickering lights and darkness. I think one time I heard my manager crying in her office.
Oh, no.
But then she came out and she was full of smiles. They were like robots. They were nobody was ever upset, and there was 3 floors, and and they always had me in the dumbest sections where I had to make those piles, those triangular pyramid piles of stuffed animals, and there would always be one kid that would come and pull one. Tourists used to just leave their kids in my section thinking it was daycare, and then walk away and leave them, because it was right in front of this big screen, and they played the same exact songs over and over. And it was the songs from Peter Pan that when I hear it, I get triggered. I don't want to talk about it because it triggers me. And then I finally had it. It was depressive. You had to read the Tigger Times and make sure that you autograph the bottom of every page so they know that you read it during your break. It was oppressive. And then one day I finally had it. I came in, and it was just a rainy, gross day out. I was in a bad mood. And one of my... the week before, actually, we had been at a meeting, and security came in and showed us a video of someone stealing. One of my coworkers was looking at himself in the mirror. You see this whole thing happen.
Yeah.
He's looking at himself in the mirror, fixing his hair, and the woman next to him sticking shirts up her sweater.
Yeah.
And so we kind of laughed at it, but then security came in and they were like, and that's why you're being escorted out of the building. And they came in, they took him out. And then literally 5 minutes later, after they did that, we had to hold hands and sing the Mickey Mouse song, because that's how we concluded every meeting. And everybody was like, M-I-C. It was so bad. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then the day before I decided I was going to quit, one of the security guards called me into the office, and he's like, who's this man you're talking to for more than 5 minutes in the suit? And I was like, that's my father. Because my dad worked right near there, and he would stop by. And he's like, well, you can't talk to people for more than 5 minutes. You have to move along. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And then he switched over to another clip, and he's like, well, look at what else we found. And it was me picking my wedgie. I was like, why would you show me that? And you shouldn't be looking at that. I was like, this place is bananas. And then finally, that day was it. They put me in the media section, which nobody ever went into, and it was hot, and the lights were hot, and it was just terrible. And they gave me all these balloons that they wanted me to hand out, and I hate balloons. And they were like, all right, you're going to hand these out. No one wanted them because it was raining. And some kid comes over, and I was PMSing. I don't know. I was raging. And this kid comes over, and he's like, can I have a balloon? I was like, you can have all the balloons. And I'm surprised he didn't float away up. And 2 seconds later, my manager comes running out because they obviously see this, and I was like, I need a break. I want a break. And they were like, no. And I was like, well, I'm going on a break. Like, I was like freaking out. One side of my head was all puffed out because the balloons were like rubbing on it. I was like, I can't do this. So I went and I called my mother. I'm on the payphone like crying, and she's like, come home. And I'm like, I'm gonna. And I quit. I told them I got a part in a Woody Allen movie, which I did not. And my manager's like, well, you'd have to start your training all over again if you quit. I was like, yep, well, that's fine by me.
Yeah.
And they gave me a 35-cent raise. I was there for like a year.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no, I'm out. I needed to leave there before I hated Disney.
Yeah.
And I love Disney.
Yeah.
I just couldn't work there. I just didn't have it in me. So that was my least favorite job.
So it's interesting because obviously sounds a little excessive and,
it was very
and a bit much, but also I can see it from being like the age I am now. There's some respect in having like how much control they have over every detail also as well, like having understanding, like putting systems in place and the longevity of the company and things like that. Yep. Do you think there is anything there that part of it is being the age you were at the time you're doing it that made you hate it
100%.
versus like if you had a job there now, would you see it differently?
So
you know what I mean?
I think definitely I would appreciate it more because you will hear me from time to time if I'm in the store with the girls and they get something and then they don't want it, I make them go back and put it back where it was.
Yeah.
Because one, that's retail. Mm-hmm. It's the worst thing to have to clean up after people leave stuff all over.
Yeah.
They really did teach me a good work ethic, and I did learn about the psychology of sales because once or twice they would have these meetings and let us sit in on them, and they had someone explain men's brains and women's brains and children's brains and which directions that people will walk in when they come in. Mm-hmm. Women go one way, men go the other, putting the toys at eye level for the kids right by the register. Like
there's lots of psychology stuff, that's
the color
interesting
stuff. There, like I learned a lot in that respect, and it seemed that the older people that worked there were the happiest.
Sure.
And I think because they understood that regiment in the schedule, whereas I did not like that in my 20s.
Right.
I didn't appreciate it. But I think now I might have a different sensitivity towards it.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your worst job?
Yeah, so for the most part, I didn't mind the jobs that I had. I mean, I think each one of them, there was, as you mentioned, there was some physical component to it, and, you know, having played sports and doing all of that, and like, you know, weightlifting was a thing, like all of those things, like the activity in it was good for me that I always enjoyed. And I think I looked at those things as jobs. I knew what they were. I never felt like they were things that were, this is me, this is what I'm doing, right? And so like I never had that attitude towards them. And I think just in general, I have that attitude of like, okay, what is the thing I'm going to learn from this that's going to help me get to where I need to be as a person? But of the ones that I think I put telemarketer because I think I think one that was, I can't even remember what it was that I was selling because I don't think I was there long at all. Like I think it was literally like maybe one day, and then I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. Like, you know what I mean? And it was the whole idea of, you know, okay, you've got a script you've got to read, and you've got to call this number of people. And every time that episode of The Office comes on where Michael gets the job at the telemarketer, I'm just like, like it's just like a call center. And I like I said, I can't remember what it was I was even trying to sell, but I know it wasn't anything that anybody really needed. And I don't respond well to being told what to say and what to do. Like I think, you know, now I respect the structure of things in terms of like, there's a reason why you're doing it a certain way, but I couldn't I'm good at selling things today and even back then in things I believe in, but when it's something I don't believe in, I have a very hard time reconciling the two, you know what I mean? And so that's what, for me, why I was just like, yeah, no, this isn't for me, no thanks. And so that was just
right. And that's kind of how I felt with Disney too. I felt like I was like force selling, like trying to always upgrade people, and I didn't like that. Like we were given like a certain amounts. The same thing with telemarketing, where you're given like a quota.
Sure.
You got to fill that quota.
Yeah.
Otherwise they'd be like on you. And I was like, how many freaking Beanie Babies do these people need? You know what I mean? Like it used to drive me crazy.
Yeah. So when did you feel like you finally had a career? Like this was where you felt good sitting?
I think it was when I got that job at Oceanside directing the kids' plays, because there was an ad in the paper. They needed a director. I just got my master's degree. I directed like a few short plays for kids at camps, but I mean, I had a lot of great ideas and I had a lot of books about it, and I had learned a lot from my directors at the college. So I zhuzhed up my resume and I went in, and it was the first time like I went on a real job interview and talked about my qualifications. And I really felt proud of myself, and I was hired, and I thought that that was great, and it was the stepping stone to me getting to Kingsborough. Once I got to Kingsborough and I got to teach my first acting class and make a syllabus in my own office, that's when I knew I had my career.
Yeah.
That's when I knew, like, I was sitting in my office with all my theater books, with my computer at my desk, and I was able to create a program just for myself and use my education, all those years of training at all the colleges. I think it started with Oceanside, and then it landed at Kingsborough, and I feel like I'm really hitting my high point now at Northern Essex.
Yeah. What would you say, like, what are some of the challenges with the career piece of this versus, where there are things you didn't like in some of those other jobs that you had? Now you're in a career, so like, what are some of the main challenges that you faced early on in your career as at Kingsborough?
So technically, I'm what is called an adjunct. That is a part-time teacher. You are not guaranteed a job. It's based on enrollment. So if the classes didn't fill, you didn't get a teaching job. That still is the scariest. Even though I'm at a good place at Northern Essex and I was in a great place at Kingsborough, but at any point the college life is volatile.
Yeah.
So if students aren't going to college, those classes aren't filling, and I'm not teaching. So that's the hardest part of what I do. Is that there may not be a class for me. And then having to work your way up the totem pole. It's, even though I went into Kingsborough and they had a place for me specifically, and I enjoyed working there immensely because they gave me all these opportunities with the middle school and the high school, and having my usual classes that were sort of guaranteed for me. I had to really work my way up to get to where I was. And then same thing happened at Northern Essex. I started at the bottom with a few theater classes, and then I moved into the communications department, and I thrived there, and I'm still working my way up. I'm just starting to get there. And where they're now offering me things like new things, new opportunities, because they're getting to know who I am. Because adjuncts are ghosts. You don't really see them. They don't really. They're not. They're not at the faculty meetings or at the what the full-time faculty go to. But I just started to get my face. You have to work really hard to get your face out there and for people to know who you are. And I worked really hard to get there, especially because I was able to go to that trip last year to Greece. That was because another colleague suggested that I can do it. That's when I knew my career was really solid. And I was building a good foundation for myself. My ultimate goal is to eventually get full-time. But I'm still working on that. That's the difficulties of being an adjunct.
So what makes you most proud about the work that you do now then?
I would have to say when I get feedback from my students, or that I have students that want to come back and visit me, or send me an email and say, hey, I get this often too. This is the one that makes me the most proud, is when my students send me an email saying, I use some of the things I learned in our class for my job, or for another class, or for a job interview. Thank you. That's why I teach. I do that because if they walk away with one thing, it's a sense of accomplishment in the work that they can do. And that makes me happy. That makes me, I love being a teacher, to have that type of connection with a student that really, that you can change their lives. Just like my Professor Aptekar changed my life, gave me direction.
Yeah.
I like to do that with my students too. That's why I don't think I would change my career at this point.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. So for me, I guess I'll tell this story. So just before I kind of made that transition into like the marketing world and doing all this online marketing stuff was really when we were at USATC, US Athletic Training Center. It was a small physical therapy office in Manhattan. Really, I mean, good business. That business made, had some nice money coming in. I was doing insurance billing, and it was a really good job. It paid the bills. We had a fun time there. We enjoyed working with the people, and it was very easy for me to turn off when I wasn't there,
Yep.
right? And was what I needed at that time. I needed something I make money, come home, and don't have to worry about
Christmas parties were the best.
Oh yeah, those were always a lot of fun. We used to rent out these places. This place called Mangia Bevi,
best.
in New York, and it was like an Italian restaurant, clearly, and it would turn into. It was usually like open bar. It would turn into people with tambourines standing on chairs and tables.
Oh my God.
It was insane.
Yeah,
it was insane.
so
I remember
great.
one time we were all trying to shove our fists in our mouth.
Look, everybody's like, I could do it. And then this is, imagine trying to have that type of party now.
Yeah.
I would not go,
Oh, no.
Wash your hands first
Yeah.
before you, can I fit my whole fist in my mouth? That was, good time.
So anyway, that got to the point where the person who was managing the place was a really great guy, and he was a really excellent buffer to the owners of the facility.
Yes.
Which, again, I don't like to talk bad about anybody. I'm
Right.
very grateful for the opportunity that I had to work there and the opportunity I had to make money and have insurance and do all of that while I was in New York, and they were good to us. But once he left, the owners became more involved in not the day-to-day, because they weren't really involved in that, but they were very paranoid people, and they were hooked up to the money of that place, like, very tightly, and it became very stressful. And it got to the point where on Sundays I would start to get sick to my stomach, and I was miserable, and I wasn't ready to go in. And that's where it became different, right? Because now I'm not able to just leave it at work. Like, it's starting to impact our day-to-day lives. And we had the girls at this point, and I was irritable with you. I was irritable with the girls.
We had moved back to
Well,
Brooklyn.
so this is where we started talking, and I'm forever grateful for you for kind of buying into what my crazy idea was, right? But you had the opportunity you were given more classes, so you're working more full-time sort of at the college.
Right.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And we had the opportunity to move into Brooklyn, and we were living with your mom. And I was like, let me try to do my own thing. And so I had taken some courses on like copywriting at the time. I had lined up some gigs with some people that used to work at the physical therapy office, and they were off doing their own things. And so I had worked up some gigs where I was doing marketing with those guys. And I was like, let me try to do this. And so, yeah, it was the complete worst and scariest time in terms of, all right, yeah, we've got 2 kids.
Yeah, but
I'm going to stop working.
It was the perfect time to do it because we were living with my mom, didn't really have to pay. We paid like her utilities.
We paid for the bills at the house. Unfortunately, we had to invest some money into fixing some things when we got there, but
I mean, it was, it was what
it
it was.
was what it was, and it was the right time.
But we were still in a comfort zone where we didn't have to worry about losing our home if we couldn't pay.
Right. So it was the best thing that could have happened,
right.
because it was a transition period, right? Because during that time, I had some clients, I had some gigs here and there. Money was never steadily flowing in, but that led me to getting jobs as the marketing director at the theater and Astoria Performing Arts Center and those things. And I was working with, so I had all of these things that started to happen, but eventually it led us to the point where we needed to make a decision about where we were going with our lives, like what was happening. And then that led us down the path of looking to coming back to Massachusetts and starting to look at that. And I remember actually that led to, again, I'm a big, okay, once you make the decision, the universe conspires to help you get there. And I think we made that decision, and I was already lining up, okay, now I see where we're going. Let's start to line up the pieces, as with anything, like how I got to New York or how we got back here. And I was ready to get a job as a copier salesman. Remember that?
Wow, yeah.
While I was sending up that and having those conversations,
wasn't that at Sabre? Just kidding.
Yeah, Sabre.
Don't they go on fire? Okay.
And so during that time, it was Facebook at the time. I was scrolling through, and somebody that I went to UMass with was actually working at Constant Contact. And a lot of what I was doing was I was blogging at the time. I was, talking about how you can use all of these things. I was working with a lot of theaters and helping them with their marketing and giving them some different approaches to think through how they do that. And I was like, ooh, Constant Contact. Like, that would actually be something I wouldn't mind doing. And they have offices out, in that area. And so I pinged him. I was like, I looked on the website, I saw it was open, and it was a job description for a content developer. And what I was doing was a lot of my own content and creating all of these things. And I was also selling some courses and things like that I was doing at the time. And it was very funny because, like, I read that job description, and it read very much like, "Dear Dave, do you do these things?" And I was like reading it and shaking my head going, yeah, I do those things. And it was like, all right. So as I reached out to my buddy, I was like, hey, do you know who's hiring for this? Can you put me in touch? Blah, 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 blah. So that'll happen. And this is where, again, the universe, I think, conspires to help you, right? Like, this was, for me, was within a matter of, I had one conversation with the hiring manager at that time, which was Rachel. Hi, Rachel, if you're listening. And we hit it off like right away. And of course I had lots of my own thinking involved in like what we could do and what that role could be and what's available to other businesses to take advantage, because at this time, all this stuff was very new. I think we're at a different point now in terms of what, it's very loud and noisy and there's lots of things. But back then it was, it presented a huge opportunity. I mean, it still does in some instances. I mean, take for instance, right now we're creating this podcast and putting it out into the world, right? And this was all very new at that time, and so had that conversation, and it was probably like a 30-minute conversation. I remember coming back into the house and I looked at you and I said, yeah, I'm going to get that job. And so I had some more interviews to do and some phone calls to have with people.
The
and then
best was with that job interview you did on like FaceTime or whatever it was. And you were sitting in the backyard in Brooklyn. In the backyard, you had on like top part was all professional. And bottom part, I think it was like swim trunks. And you were, and I was thinking, wow, look at this. Like, you are doing a job interview via Skype or whatever it was. And 2 seconds later, when it was over, then we went in the shark pool in the backyard. Like, I was like, this could be a big thing.
So, and one of the things I learned before, like knowing I had to take that step, was one thing I learned is I was good at what I did, but I wasn't very good at the business aspect of running my own business. And I wasn't doing well with not being around people all the time, right? And so that's why
Dave was home with the girls.
Which was fine. That was great.
And
like, I'm so grateful for that opportunity to spend that time with the girls, right? So that was great. But just in terms of just like professionally and feeling fulfilled in that realm, like, it left a little bit to be desired. And so anyway, then I came out to this area, Massachusetts area, and went and interviewed, spent the whole day interviewing with people, and then got the job by the end of the day. And within 2 weeks, we had the girls out here registered for school. We were renting my dad's house because he was living in Boston at the time. Like, all of this stuff, we moved really quickly. And then, you were still in Brooklyn because you had to finish out your semester. And so we were apart for a while. It was a whole thing. That was
crazy. Yeah. Like, and I couldn't leave Kingsborough because I had finally, I left on a high note over there, which made me so happy. I came full circle as being alumni from Kingsborough and acting in all the shows, and theater was a big part of my life there. And then I got to go back and teach it. And then the semester before I left, I got to direct Almost Maine and do a playwriting festival. And that was the first time I got to do the play that I wrote, Being Unreasonable, with students that I loved, and I got to do ACTF with them, and I got to have one big party before I left there to come here, and
Yeah.
that was also great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so now, I mean, I've been at Constant Contact for 8 years, over 8 years now. We're going on, I think, 8 years. And so for me, just being able to see the trajectory of that, like when we were in these places of like, okay, like you putting your trust in me to say like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And it was a big risk to just say like, I'm going to quit this job. I'm not going to have any regular money coming in. And, there were times where, thanks Dad for, helping out when we needed help, those types of things. But being able to say, I'm teaching myself all of this stuff. And then to be able to have the opportunity to come into a place where now I have some resources available to put things into action and then see those things actually happen the way they were playing out in my head was, and still is, amazing.
Right.
And one of the things that I take stock of from time to time, because it's like, whoa, how grateful am I for that opportunity that I put myself in that situation. Like I busted my ass. Like I said, I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. I taught myself how to do this stuff. And so, but to be now where I started as like just an individual contributor and then became a manager of one of the properties there and then manager of people. And today to be a director of that team there it blows my mind.
Can you imagine, just picture for a second the scenario of you did not take that risk.
Oh yeah.
And I told you no. You're not doing that. We're gonna stay where we are, and you're gonna stay in that job because it's a big risk.
Yeah.
Can you imagine would you still be at that job? You think?
I mean, anything's possible. It's hard to say, right? Because you don't know. Of course they are. Yeah, of course they are. So I mean, possibly, but I hope not. I hope not. I don't think I would have. I would have found something else because I don't think, because I have always been the type of person who always believes that you shouldn't be in situations that make you miserable.
Right.
That with jobs for me has always been a thing. So I don't think if I didn't do what I did, I would have had to find something else. Right. Okay. But so and similarly to you, like now that because of even just saying that I don't think that you should be doing things that make you miserable. Like I love what I do. I love the people that I work with, and to have people now that have been on my team and that have since moved on or just are even on my team today, like to get those notes from people too,
right,
where they are grateful for the opportunity to work, because I try very hard, and I have this with people that even aren't on my team that I've just worked with, like that have said like, I've really loved working with you because it's been fun to work with you. And I like you're doing this every day pretty much of your life. It should be fun and you should enjoy it. And I do. And that's what's most exciting to me about the whole thing.
And that's a success story, because honestly, I know a lot of people that complain about their jobs and their lives and they feel like you're stuck.
So what's your plan to get out?
Stuck.
Yeah, you're not. There's always another option, I think.
There's so many options, and sometimes you have to be a little bit more methodical, and especially if you have a family, you have to, kind of take things slowly. But I mean, you're a success story it's never too late to start over, and I'm super proud of you because
thank you.
Because of that. And
thanks for believing in me.
I did believe in you. Otherwise, I would have never said okay to making that big leap.
I mean, and that's a bit of my personality. Like I find a thing that I'm into, and then I have to master it to a certain point and accomplish things. Yeah, and that was where I was at that particular time, and that's one of those things that stuck because I'm doing it 8 years.
I also think
over 13 years if I'm thinking about when I wasn't,
I think
working
you and
in constant contact.
Could have also, if we never did this, I think you and I could have also been heavy hitters in the World Series of poker. We were doing
I was like, where are you going with this? Like, where's this going? Yeah.
We could have been.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about heavy hitters, but maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
So I have a question for you. Here's our surprise question.
Okay.
Do you think you'd ever do anything illegal to make money?
Not at this point, but when I was younger, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
I might have.
Okay.
No. I think at one point I tried to do a pyramid scheme.
Oh. All right.
It was when you go to the store at 12 o'clock at night on a Wednesday with a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about the pyramid scheme. I think that was like a thing, and then I chickened out. But no, I would not do anything illegal to make money. Unless, I mean, like, God forbid, we hit on troubled times.
Right.
I mean, you know, I would try to find a legal job, but, you know.
Yeah, I can't really imagine it, like, because I'm
pretty straight
I'm pretty
laced.
straight and narrow,
Yeah,
and
both of
like
us
on the
are.
up and up for the most part, and so
Yeah.
like I can't imagine but then again, desperate times.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, desperate times call for desperate measures.
That's what
So
I'm saying.
I
All
don't
right.
know.
Ready?
What's your question
You
for me?
want- Okay, so my question is, if you hit the lottery or became an overnight billionaire, would you still work, and what would you do? I can't imagine you're sitting around.
No, I definitely wouldn't sit around. I would still work. I mean, I think I would do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what I would do at this point because, like, I think I'm at a different stage in my career now. I don't know. I would definitely still work. Like, I wouldn't not work, or I would definitely have something that I was
I
doing.
feel like you'd have your own business of some sort.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Like, it depends on how much money that was and what we could do with it. Like, I would definitely, like, I would invest it. Like, I would do things that were smart with money, like that type of thing. Like, I wouldn't just squander it, but I would do things that put us in positions where we wouldn't have to worry about it. But I don't know exactly what I would do, but I would definitely be doing something. And maybe I would be doing something more altruistic in terms of, like, you know, I don't know.
Doing things for other people.
Yeah, like
to make their lives
doing
better,
something like that or
easier.
something. I don't know. Or I definitely, well, one of the things I think, you know, I got the opportunity, one of the things I had said, you know, in part of my career here is I think we just need to figure out what that thing would be. But, like, I wanted to speak, right? And so last year, I got the opportunity I spent, you know, 1 to 2, sometimes 3 times a month speaking last year, you know, out traveling the country and doing all of that. And so I think for me, it's very much just saying, okay, what's the next thing? And then putting a plan in place to do that. And I think similarly, I think we're setting ourselves up, and we'll do an episode on this when we get to where when we hit that goal that we're trying to reach for, but we're setting ourselves up methodically to be in a position where we're comfortable,
Right.
and probably a level of comfort that we have never been in, just by the nature of our ignorance with money and things like that, I think, right? And I
Yes.
think now we know a lot more, and maybe starting a little later than most people would, but I'm glad we're starting and we're hitting a certain level, right? So yeah, I guess that was a lot to say. I don't know. What would you do?
Wait, are you asking me what I would do?
Would you still be working?
Oh, absolutely not. I would buy my own island, and I'd be laying on that beach
And
every
this
day.
and this is why the both of us have to work together.
a
This is
drink
why we
in
come
my
together,
hands.
because, like, she would spend all of my money,
all
and I'd be
my
like,
cats.
no, yeah.
And I'd have a little space set up for you know, friends to come and visit. They'd have to fly there, of course, and it'd be great. It'd be good times.
All right, we have some audience questions.
Okay.
So let's get into that. So Joanne, this is a question from Joanne, and this is directed at you, but I'm going to answer it anyway, Joanne. But I love teaching, but sometimes feel like teachers aren't respected anymore. Reese, do you ever feel that way?
So I've been very fortunate at teaching in higher ed that I didn't have to deal with too much of that, because what I do, there's more independence there.
Yeah.
And students are way more responsible for their own outcome. So the only time that I would get the brunt of any of that is if they gave me a poor, like, we do like teacher evaluations. So
Yeah.
if they wanted to get revenge on me, they could just do it there. Or write, I have some really funny, rate my professors. Most of them are positive, but there are 2 that I will always go back and read, and it cracks me up because I don't know who I pissed off, but it's the weirdest negative, you know, sort of feedback, but whatever.
Okay.
But no, for the most part, I feel like I
People
have
are searching the internet right now.
do it because it's worth the read. It's pretty funny. So no, I mean, yes, I feel like teachers do not get the respect that they should, especially because I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I hear about it often. I do not think that teachers get paid nearly enough.
Sure.
That they should
Yeah,
not be taking
yeah.
money out of their own pockets for
Right.
supplies. I
Right.
think that's absurd. I think that parents put a lot of the onus on the teachers to teach them manners, behavior, life lessons, and I've seen it once or twice. I got to do it with my favorite, Lisa Mary. We used to teach some after school enrichment programs in Lawrence, and there are a lot of kids with a lot of issues that a lot of teachers are not trained to deal with, and we certainly weren't. We were trying to teach them some theater and have fun with them, and the kids just could not handle it. They, for numerous reasons, and the teachers looked, by the end of the day, they looked like zombies. They were so tired and drained, and it's like they have 30-something kids of their own that they cater to and take care of every single day each week. So yeah, I do not feel that teachers get the respect that they deserve. I think they deserve way more. But luckily for myself, being in higher ed, like I said, I don't have to deal with
I think there are two sides to this too, and I think this is any profession, not just the teaching profession. So yes, I agree with you. I think we put this weird we put these weird values on things that really should deserve like a certain level of of pay and things like that you don't get, right? And I think that yes, I agree with you that they're underpaid and all that, and I respect the profession. But even hearing the girls and seeing some of this in just my own thing is that I also think it's one thing to respect the profession and yes, respect the thing, but then there's also those people that you in the profession that need to do more than just show up.
Right.
And but I think that's true of any profession, right? Like right. I have little respect for people who just show up and don't do anything.
Right.
And I'm always looking for those people that are putting their best. They're engaged in the process. They care about what they're doing. They're putting thinking about the students first and doing all of that. And I think that's where when you're doing that, I think that's where you earn a certain level of respect.
That respect. True.
Even though you might not get it from the people, right? Like not the people, but like the institution. So the educational system might not give it to you because that's just a whole convoluted system anyway, So it's one of those weird things.
I also feel like sometimes teachers are there forever and they kind of lose that excitement. And listen, kids make it friggin' difficult.
Especially today, I feel like it's very, very difficult because like you're saying, there's a lot of like things that parents aren't doing with kids today. And
yep. And so when the girls
come home... A lot of respect for people I do have that can do that.
Right. And and that's why I make it part of my daily life to make sure that I'm doing the right thing by my students and keeping them motivated and excited and being current and asking them what works for them. A lot of teachers can't really do that, and I think they lost their excitement for their job. And so the girls talk highly of their coaches. Their coaches are very instrumental to them and really give them a lot of focus and good vibes. Whereas they do have a couple of teachers that they're just like, I don't even know what this person is doing here. Yeah. And that makes me sad because, but then there are the teachers that are really great. That are really great. So it's not a lot, but I could see what you're saying.
Yeah. So Miranda asks, is the career you have now what you expected your career would be as an adult? So for me, like I don't know if I ever really had like expectations.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know. I never had like a thing that I wanted to be. Like I think we mentioned before, like I could see myself being like a late night talk show host, that type of thing. But I think it was all geared through like what had my interest at the moment. And so like when it was acting, it was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be an actor. Or when it was doing the band, it was like, oh, I'm going to be in a band. Like, but it all kind of came back around to, marketing and doing that thing. Right. Which thinking about it in each of those scenarios, like I was very good at the components of that aspect because marketing is a thing you have to do in any job, right? You have to market yourself. And I think that it always comes back to that. So I don't think I had any real expectations. My only expectation was that I have to be able to support myself. And that's what I was going to do regardless of what it was that I was doing, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
How about you?
Well, I definitely think I was...
Did you ever think you would be a college
professor? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I definitely thought that I would have a job that required me to do a lot of talking, which I'm really good at. And I thought that it would be more in I would be an actor. Yeah. I really thought that was going to be a thing, but I kind of still am. Yeah. I get to use my acting skills all the time. And I did love the idea of teaching. I did like that growing up, but I never thought that I would have a master's degree and be a college professor. And I think Sister Barbara, who took care of me in high school, really always had my back. I think she passed away, I think last year or the year before. I think she would be super proud of me knowing what a long way I came. Because it was always like, she has potential. If she would just use her powers for good instead of evil, she could do so much. And Sister Barbara would tell me all the time, you're better than this. You're better than this. And yeah, I think she thought I would be, not doing what I'm doing right now, but I think she would be supremely proud. I hope she's looking down at me and is proud of me.
So Jake asks, what's your advice in dealing with the ups and downs of your career? So that's a good one. I think that's one of those ones that are, at some point you have to deal with that. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to not have to suffer through, a lot of downs. I don't think I've had more ups than downs. But I always kind of ask myself in those situations where you're questioning what's going on or what's happening, like I'm always kind of questioning myself in the sense of like, I ask like, is there something more that I need to accomplish? And so it's like, simply put, like, what is it that I'm trying to do? And can I do those things in my current role? And that's where I start to then figure out, okay, if the answer is yes or no, then, all right, now I need to start to build out the plan, right? And so whatever that is, and that's how I typically look at those scenarios and dealing with those is the best that I can kind of think of to do that. How about you?
Well, I would say in my career, as being an adjunct for any adjunct or any part-time job that is not guaranteed and you're really hoping on the thriving aspect of it, I would say the downs are always low enrollment. So I love having at least 4 classes. 4 classes is stability for me. I feel better about my income when I have at least 4 classes, but it's never guaranteed. So I'm the type of person, especially in this climate, I am always looking ahead and having a plan B, C, D, E. I've always got a couple of tricks up my sleeves just in case. That's why I do the side directing at acting out or, just whenever I can find those little jobs, I take them. Networking is key in my profession and just getting your name out there and getting people knowing you. And the downside, obviously is just having to deal with the chaos of not knowing whether or not you're going to have those things. But the upside is having all the classes. I love it. It's my favorite. And I embrace those moments and those workloads. I never complain about having all those classes and all the students and having to learn everybody's names and work with what I have. That's the best part of it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we did it. That is episode 6, friends. Thank you for spending some time with us as always. We enjoy this time every week that we have with you. So thank you for that. Please do subscribe to our email list. That's how you can submit questions to ask us when we have these episodes. There will be a link within the show notes for you to find where you can do that. So please do. Also, wherever you're listening to this podcast, please make sure that you're subscribed and leave us a review. Your reviews and ratings really do help us get found. Life is a group project. Be kind to each other.
And while you're being kind, also practice some social distancing. Flatten that curve. Wash your damn hands. Be safe and healthy. Bye. We got the right stuff.